Dear Holy God, dear Holy God, thank you so much for the time we get to spend again today, this Sabbath day, and reflect on some important facts of history and present truth and future events that we are living in presently, that we have learned about, and that will be a fulfillment of prophetic measure as they develop. We still are very grateful, dear God, that you're the one in control, leading the powers to be on this planet. We are observers of the events and but not partakers, fully understanding where our place is in our preparation for eternity. We are grateful for being here and given the privilege that you've given us. And we thank you in the name of Jesus. Amen. Okay, so the title of this presentation is What is a Totalitarian Mindset? It's actually not, that's probably not a full title for this presentation. It's actually maybe what the difference is between totalitarian mindset and authoritarian mindset. Um, There's an author. She's no longer living. Her name is Hannah Arendt. She was a German and American historian and a philosopher. And she lived post World War II during that time period. And she wrote a book called The Origins of Totalitarianism based on Nazism and Stalinism. And she broke down the history of those two governing powers and what it did to the people living under those rules. And so the discussion I'm taking through this presentation is looking at totalitarianism, not based on Hannah Arendt's book, basically. I mean, her book is on record. You can find it easily on the internet. You can find communion pieces about it and in Wikipedia. I think you can even download the entire transcript. There's other articles by her and then of course historian dialogues about her work. So it's all on the internet. My goal here in this presentation is not to really break down her book or even really look at it, but only look at the skeletal background of totalitarianism and what it does in governments that run their countries on the planet in history and present day. And and I do apologize. There's a lot of reading. Most of my information is taken from Wikipedia and other narratives found on the internet. So I don't have any direct citations or footnotes at the end of it, but I'll do my best. So a description of totalitarian, it's complete and total domination. Totalitarian regime aims for absolute control over every aspect of individual and public life. The citizens lose personal freedoms, becoming instruments of the state's ideologies. It also prescribes to ideology and propaganda. These regimes are driven by rigid ideologies. Example from the book Nazism and Stalinism that claim to offer absolute truths, which are absolute lies. Propaganda is constantly used to rewrite reality, making it hard for citizens to distinguish truth from lies. So when a community or a society lives under these extreme conditions, they don't have any more autonomy for themselves. And we're going to see more of what that means under totalitarianism. Under these two distinctions of ideology and propaganda, or the understanding of totalitarianism, it also uses terror and isolation to control the people. Fear and terror are tools used to maintain power and suppress dissent. The citizens are also isolated from each other, where it develops a destroying of trust and solidarity, making organized resistance nearly impossible. Mass movements. Totalitarian arises from mass movements exploiting people's loneliness, alienation, and a desire for belonging. Also, individuals are absorbed into the movement, losing their independent judgment. Now, can you imagine having not the ability to think for yourselves? And it's probably easy to see that when you're born under this very strict policies and rules and laws, and your whole life in and out as you grow from a youth to adulthood, you have no space to plan or think or even begin to rise up against these feelings of this isn't a fair society to live in. And God's kingdom, this is like the contradiction to God's kingdom, is the Godhead had to allow Satan or Lucifer to run the course of sin until the end when Christ returns. And there's a whole 6,000, possibly 7,000 years of a lot of history involved just to allow sin to develop, grow, perceive, be empowered, do its thing on the planet, and then finally come to its final end when Christ returns and destroys it once and for all. But it has a history. See, but that's the difference. Under a totalitarian government in God's kingdom, God allows minds to develop and choices to be made and decisions. And a fleet of angels decided to rebel and make a whole new government here on Earth, controlling the humans of this planet. And through that dominion here on Earth, a totalitarian government has been created under certain regimes at certain time periods and past histories and to present. And as I said, we're going to get into that. So can you imagine just not having the ability to think for yourselves under a government like this? Also, under totalitarianism, you lose your individuality. The governments strip away individual identity, reducing people to mere components in their political machinery, and people become disconnected from their moral compass and personal responsibility. Elimination of reality. Leaders manipulate facts in erasing the distinction between truth and falsehood. Historical facts are constantly changed or denied to serve the ruling of their ideology. And just to give you a little dictionary idea of what ideology means, a system of ideas and ideals, especially one of which forms the basis of economic or political theory and policy, the ideology of democracy. So that sentence would just explain. I know Elder Perminder posted something in the media broadcast recently, a little paragraph about ideology. It's very general in there, but the ideology under totalitarianism is how they're using their power to control the political system of that government. I hope that makes sense. There's a lot of information online to get a deeper meaning if you desire. But in short, Hannah Ardent's view of totalitarianism is a complete and unprecedented threat, a political system that destroys individual freedom and manipulates the reality. It uses terror and isolation to control the entire population. So I have a question. The first answer was there. If you can tell me, there's, I think, 6 or 7 geographical areas in the world, in the past and in the present, of governments that practice totalitarian on their people in their governments. Can you name a few of them? I'm going to write them down.
I'm going to start with Zimbabwe. because that's where I'm from, and we had Mugabe. He was a totalitarian.
Okay. What's his name?
Mugabe, Robert
Uh,
Mugabe. Yeah, he's a very interesting figure. He used to sport the Hitler mustache, and
uh,
his ideology was quite extreme and interesting. It gave a shock factor when he spoke. You just were shocked at the things that he would say as a leader. I can't think
it-
of anything to give as an example.
yeah, that's okay. Is he still in power today?
No, he's dead, I want to say. But he was in his 80s, but when he stepped down, he was or older.
Okay, that's fine. That's good. Thank you. Does anyone else have another country where the government has used complete and total totalitarianism on their people?
Thinking of North Korea. Not sure.
North Korea. Okay, thank you. That's on the list for sure. Um, are there any other countries that someone could think of currently or in history of totalitarianism on their people?
Could we say Trump in the States in the current affairs?
All right, thank you. Are there any more choices or known facts?
Nicaragua.
Nicaragua? Why
And
Nicaragua?
it's a dictatorship, but I'm not sure if it would come under the definition of totalitarian.
Okay. So as I proceed in our presentation, I'm definitely going to go into more detail about totalitarianism and the governments of the world that do practice it, historically and currently. Can we have one more? One more, if someone has an idea.
Nazi Germany and Russia or USSR.
Okay, thank you very much. Nazi Germany and Soviet Union, I guess, right? Russia, or is that different? What is that? Which one?
Well,
Sorry.
both, I guess, Soviet Union and the new Russia. I guess they're both sort of totalitarian regimes.
And okay. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. Three of those were correct that were mentioned, and we're going to go look at the history. The first one is Nazi Germany, and the reign of Nazi Germany was in 1933 to 1945, the end of Second World War. We know the leader is Adolf Hitler. His ideology was Nazism, and his mode of control was fascism and racial supremacy. Oh, hang on a sec. And the methods to use to control the people, he used extreme propaganda, racial persecution, genocide, of course, we know it as the Holocaust, terror, suppression, and dissent. I have a little understanding here of what suppression of dissent means. If you don't know, I didn't know, I had to look it up. Refers to the act of actively hindering or preventing the expression of opinions that disagree with those in power or dominant narrative. This can be done through various means, including violence, legal restrictions, employment discrimination, surveillance, deception, and manipulation of public opinion through media. So Nazi Germany under Adolf Hitler, he used suppression of dissent to keep his people from having a voice. The second one, Soviet Union under Stalin. So it ran it coexisted with Nazi Germany and a little bit past and a little bit before 1924 to 1953. Joseph Stalin was its leader. Stalinism was the ideology using extreme form of communism. And the methods to control the people was state terror, propaganda. They had forced labor camps and suppression of free expression. The third one was fascist Italy. 10 years prior to Nazi Germany, which started in 1933, fascist Italy started in 1922 and ran coherently to 1945. The leader was under Benito Mussolini. Their ideology was fascism, and the method or the force with the people was authoritarianism and nationalism. I don't know enough about this history. I haven't taken the time to look at it. I know Elder Tess certainly has in the past, but the methods to control the people was again propaganda, censorship, secret police, violence against political opponents, suppression, and individual rights. Number 4 on the list is Maoist China, post-World War II, running from 1945 to 1976. Its leader was Mao Zedong, and his ideology was Maoism, and it's a variant of communism. But I don't know what that means exactly. I'm going to look into it afterwards when I have time. How many variants of communism is there? What does it mean? What does it look like? And his method to control the people, again, was through propaganda, mass mobilization, forced labor, culture revolution, persecution of intellectuals, violation, suppression of opposition. And number 5 on the list, as mentioned, North Korea, from 1948 to present. Several leaders, Kim II, Sung, Kim Jong-il, and the current leaders Kim Jong-un. Their ideology is Juche, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Juche means it's the mastery of one's own destiny or self-reliance is North Korea's official state ideology. It emphasizes national independence, self-reliance, and a unique Korean identity, incorporating elements of Marxism, Leninism, but with a strong focus on Korean sovereignty. Juche also emphasizes loyalty to the leader, particularly Kim Il-sung, and his successors as essential to national prosperity, self-reliance, and extreme authoritarianism. The methods used to control their people to this day: absolute control over information, pervasive propaganda, severe punishment for dissent, forced labor camps, personality cult around leaders. And number 6, for historical totalitarian governments that we've had on this planet already, is Cambodia under Khmer Rouge from 1975 to 1979. The leader's name was Pol Pot. His ideology was radical communism. I'm not sure what radical communism consists of. Again, this is another one that I'm interested in looking up. And the methods to control the people was through genocide, forced relocation of population mass, executions, extreme control over daily life, eradication of intellectuals and cultural traditions. And I know from time to time we'll hear in the news mass graves, unopening of mass graves in the region of where Pol Pot was governing in Cambodia or in that area. You'll find like a large quantity of people unearthed that have been murdered by this government. You know, I mean, there was one recently in the news, maybe a year or so ago. So, yeah, pretty severe, harsh conditions to live under. And the last one mentioned is East Germany. the German Democratic Republic from 1949 to 1989. And this is a history that Germany really is trying to cover up, not really be well known anymore. Couple of leaders, Walter Albright and Erich Honecker. Their ideology was Soviet-influenced communism. And their methods to control the people, again, common thread here, secret police, mass surveillance, informants, suppression of freedom, and immigration propaganda. So these are the historical examples, and up into present time, it's pretty clear of totalitarian governments characterized by by extreme control, propaganda, violence, repression of individuals, freedoms, and human rights. So just really quick, so Maka, just yes or no, do you think the Zimbabwe government, Mugabe, if I'm not saying his name properly, forgive me, was he a totalitarian government in your opinion, based on what I've just read? Maybe you're not able to come to the mic. Well, okay, that's fine. I can ask you later.
Sorry, Adley. Yes, I do.
You
So
do?
I think he's a relevant example, especially during the peak of his rule. I'm just looking it up right now.
Okay, that's fine. I'll leave you there. And Debbie, if you're there, do you think Nicaragua fits the example of a totalitarian government as what I've just described?
You know, Ali, from my knowledge, probably not. Just because it's not developed quite as extremely and on all of, you know, some of the different methods and so on at this point possibly have not been executed yet. So I would say on the path to, but not necessarily there yet.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate both of your insights and
Sorry, Ali,
inputs.
can I just add? So the reason why I believe Zimbabwe belongs on this list is because of the land seizures. They took they used the media to turn Black people against white people and took away their land. And they used violence to do this. And he definitely had a cult of personality,
Okay.
like Putin does and the others that use their
Mhm.
personality.
Exactly. Okay, thank you so much. So what about Trump? I know that was mentioned too. We're going to go into Trump's administration, the government, looking at the first term from 2017 to 2021. Not categorized as totalitarian by historical or political science standards. However, critics have expressed concern about some behaviors and actions they see exhibiting authoritarian tendencies, which is completely true. So now we're going to look at the difference between totalitarianism versus authoritarianism. Totalitarianism is absolute control over every aspect of life, elimination of political opposition, extensive use of state, sponsored violence, terror, propaganda, suppression of individual identity, like Stalin's Soviet Union or Nazi Germany. Nobody had a say. The youth were raised up for Hitler's army. The people they were persecuting was not just anti-Semitism. It was a lot of women. There was LGBTQ community in these prison camps. There were non Aryan, if I can say it that way, or Caucasian people put into these concentration camps. It was very, very racially orchestrated in Nazi Germany. I shouldn't just focus on that because I think I am going to focus on that a little bit more further on. So that is the definition of totalitarianism, and the definition of authoritarianism, forgive me for not pronouncing it, concentration of political power in a leader or a small elite group, often restricting freedoms, undermining dissent, and attacking independent media, but generally less extreme and persuasive as totalitarianism. So Trump's presidency and authoritarian concerns. Critics argue Trump showed authoritarian tendencies in these ways. So in the first 4 years of his presidency, he attacks the press. He calls the media the enemy of the people and frequently labeled unfavorable coverages as fake news. We don't hear fake news anymore today, I don't think. I haven't really heard it slip his tongue, but he definitely has much more control going forward in his presidency. We'll look a little bit at that as well. Undermining democratic norms, questioning election integrity without substantial evidence. Okay, so remember, not long ago, he didn't concede to Joe Biden winning the election. It had to go to court. It cost thousands, maybe even millions of tax dollars, a lot of time and energy, a lot of lawyers. He went through a lot of lawyers to get to prove that the election was stolen. I think finally at the very end, Joe Biden was already in the White House, in the Oval Office, running as president, and maybe Trump had a little sliver where he may have conceded. I think there was an article based on that. But by claiming that the election was stolen, it culminated in the events that took place on Capitol Hill, the insurrection. And so he's undermining democratic norms basically in his first term. Also, what he's highly prizes in his circle is a consolidation of loyalty. Trump places significant importance on personal loyalty, sometimes at the expense of democratic institutions. However, unlike totalitarian regimes, Trump's administration never completely controlled media or eliminated the opposition parties or abolished elections and democratic institutions. He faced considerable institutional resistance. Congress, courts, independent media, civil society, all took time and constrained his actions during the first term. The American political system, checks and balances, largely remained intact, demonstrating resilience against authoritarian tendencies. So the conclusion of Trump's first administration, while he did display behaviors associated with authoritarianism, such as undermine democratic norms, prompting loyalty above institutions, I've just mentioned that, and attacking critical media, as presently he does not meet the criteria of a totalitarian government, which is significantly much more severe form of governments, as I've just looked at 7 countries that did practice it. Hang on a sec, I just lost my place. Okay. Okay. So, and it's important to know the distinction between the two governing bodies of what government is using, what tactic of control, whether it is a total control over the people, their thinking, their judgment, their practices, their cultures, their beliefs, their religion, their medical even. I mean, I didn't even go into really deep detail of totalitarianism. Authoritarianism is more depicted of controlling the political aspect, the narrative of the government, media, and I'll continue to give more of a description there. So, but it's important to know the difference between the two ruling powers. The second term for Trump's government so far, here's an updated look at Trump's actions since entering the second term with his authoritarian behavior, and it's really quite concerning. I mean, he's been in power now for 8 months. Like day one, January 1st, I think, or whatever very first day he was in office, he's already signing an executive order to cut funding for what was it, the Federal Reserves, I think, or somewhere along that line. He did a lot of backlash. He did a lot of cutting. He destroyed people's livelihoods, took away a lot of jobs, and so on. We'll go into it. But he still falls short of practicing a totalitarianism. But very much authoritarianism trends have intensified under his rule. Let's see. Some points to look at. Trump. So I'm actually not able to get to everything. Probably the points that I have picked out aren't really big for us as Canadians, but I'm gonna try to pick up a little bit and go into some of the things that he has accomplished so far under his authoritarian government. Trump and his administration have effectively dismantled U.S. aid through executive orders. The staff has been purged, mass programs are destroyed or terminated. The absorption is brought back into the State Department, so the money is returned to the State Department. These moves have triggered severe global risks, health risks, and widespread legal pushback. Mass firings. In January, he abruptly dismissed 17 independent inspectors federally and purged members from different boards and agencies. And a lot of what was done was in violation of statutory protections. Again, talking about loyalty tests, his entire administration and leadership and people that he brought into his mega movement is a circle of people who he trusts, and a lot of them have zero what's the word, zero experience in the leadership roles that they've been put in. He built up a mega team that suits his interests and people who will carry out what he wants to achieve in his administration, in his governing power. And so he's built a team of people who are loyal to him. Targeting opponents under his authoritarian regime, he is attacking and his political opponents. So Democratic anything, he has gone into Act Blue. Act Blue is an organization that was created by the Democratic Party to create a fundraising platform for Democratic events or elections. Act Blue has raised $16 billion for Democratic candidates, but the Trump organization is investigating where the funds are coming from, who are behind this Democratic platform. And I don't know if he can dismantle it, but I'm sure he's going to try. He's attacking free press or free expression. So in 2017 to 2020, his first term, he already did bar certain news outlets from his news. When he would have a briefing or something, a public briefing, he would not allow, say, CNN in all the time. He tried barring the Washington Post, New York Times from coming in and asking questions during the briefing. And today that still goes on, but now he's attacking the more independent, not the big news outlets. So AP, Associated Press, he's attacking The Guardian, Political, still CNN, still New York Times. I don't know if he's attacking Washington Post anymore because Jeff Bezos has rubbed shoulders with him in the beginning and wanted favors as a billionaire, didn't want to lose his paper. So, anyone who is anti-Trump or anti-mega and the whole breakdown of the government and voicing truth over false narratives, Trump is attacking those news outlets. And let's see, what else? Controlling education and culture. So another thing, he's criminalizing from kindergarten to grade 12 indoctrination of, he calls it or labels it anti-American. For example, gender ideology, mandates law enforcement investigation and prosecution of teachers or counselors who violate these norms. I put in here Sesame Street, Robert Reich. I don't remember if I mentioned him earlier. He's my favorite communist, or not communist, opinion piece journalist. He's a writer. He's got books out there. He does videos. He has articles on Facebook. I read. I follow his work. He put one out there on Sesame Street just in the last few weeks on why Donald Trump wants to get rid of Sesame Street. And I think it's not so much. There was a little, maybe some of you have watched it. It was kind of comical in a way of, I think it was Oscar. He was wearing a red wig and he was in a trash can and he was saying that, I can't remember all the details. Like my memory is so short based on that story, but he was making fun of Donald Trump having the most trash than anybody else has. And we know that Donald Trump hates being criticized. He hates being made fun of. He gets even with his opponents. He shames them. He bashes them. He destroys them because he doesn't like to be made fun of. But it's not just that Sesame Street made fun of him, but it's an educational program. And one of the Trump's executive orders was to destroy the education fund, the education board, cutting back on after-school programs for inner school city kids, children who are maybe come from poverty backgrounds. They won't have extra social curriculum after school, like sports events or reading clubs or arts programs or anything to develop intellectual bearing or individual growth, right? Trump is attacking education, and so he's cut the funding for the education. And I think with Sesame Street, it's the same thing. According to some of the articles out there, Sesame Street is every one of us who grew up in North America grew up on Sesame Street. And our children grew up on Sesame Street, and it's an educational program teaching children how to read, how to count, how to do the ABCs, and moral values and anything good and positive. PBS is being dismantled. Yeah, I think everyone has seen that video on how Mr. Rogers went to court to protect PBS and the purpose of it, and how it reflects on children who need that source of education for growth, mental stimulation and growth. So Trump wants to destroy extracurricular activities. Also, museum narratives control. So he wants to control. Okay, so in his first term, he was impeached 3 times. Is it 2 or 3 times? So it's in the Smithsonian archives. He wants to remove all the mention of his impeachments and eliminate what was termed divisive historical narratives based on his impeachments. He wants to eradicate that history entirely, change his storybooks. That's another form of propaganda that totalitarian governments have done, is they rewrite history under propaganda measures. I don't know if you can classify this as a propaganda measure, but it certainly sounds familiar in a sense. Civic and academic repression. Civil society crackdowns, US, due to repression of protests, journalist arrests, defunding public media, and targeting pro-Palestine advocate groups. So we know that Trump supports Israel. He's had the president of Israel in the Oval Office. We saw the outlet news of that idea. He's still supplying weapons to Israel to still pound on Hamas and Palestinian and all the war over there in the Middle East. It's unrelenting. So he's supporting Israel, but any proactive group supporting Palestine, he's angry. And of course, Canada had to anger Trump again just last week in the news by supporting Palestine and saying that it is a nation and a country and supporting it. And of course, there was that second article. Maybe this is why there's no tariff deal, because Trump is angry, and Trump already stated he's angry with Canada's decision to support the Palestine country. We saw over the last months how higher education is being dismantled, pressure and legal political actions against institutions like Harvard, visa restrictions on international students. And of course, that is during a time period still that was very scary for international students, with ICE arresting large amounts of humans and putting them away to other countries in solitary confinement. Students from other countries had every right to go to universities like Harvard and others for a higher education. Trump is destroying that process as well, and firing staff and dismantling higher education. Foreign interference. So I have this in here, and I did remember reading a little bit about this in the news, but I don't know the full gist of it. He does support Jair Bolsonaro, the ex-president of Brazil, has always liked him, supported him on his first term during the COVID time period. There was striking resemblance in how they dealt with COVID in these two countries. But their suggestion that US has been interfering and using authoritarian practices abroad, especially dealing with Bolsonaro. And if anybody here listening has a little bit more information to add, I would appreciate that. I was going to actually delete this part because I don't know enough about it, but he is clearly interfering in politics abroad. It's not the first time. We see it in other countries like the Ukraine. Okay. Also, he's attacking the Fed, central bank system. He's so tariffs. I probably have a very modest figure here. Instituting sweeping tariffs, 35 to 41%. I think that's modest in comparison to other statistics out there and what countries pay what, or as little or as high as. And there's also lawsuits emerging, whether it's legal to expose or implement very harsh taxes on these countries for their goods. So no deal was made in Canada as of this week, which is fine. And I trust our government will make a choice and make a decision as they promised in protection of the people of our country. Look, I don't know. We'll see. It's all in the future yet. And Trump changes his mind constantly anyway. So framing authoritarianism is not totalitarianism. The Trump government is not totalitarianism, is deeply drenched in authoritarianism. Trump's second term exhibits escalating authoritarianism, features aggressive consolidation of executive orders, targeting critics, penalizing institutions, and using state mechanisms to force loyalty. Like, those are his biggest things. He really wants to dismantle democracy, take control of the government, which he's succeeding. I haven't even, and I'm not going to mention Elon Musk and Doge and that fiasco of huge firings of, I did talk a little bit, but not to the detail that we're fully aware of when we saw it happen in the earlier months when Trump was really busy there and had his best friend go in there and dismantle everything. So conclusion about Trump's current presidency is better described as an authoritarian populism, but it's definitely not totalitarianism. I want to add, before I go on to Putin's Russia, is that I do know that in the first term, he met with Kim Jong-un and Putin, and he thought he said in his words, they were good people. There's nothing wrong with them. He has a different opinion now, probably, of Putin, and he has a different opinion of Kim Jong-un, but at that time, he wanted to consider them as allies. And knowing that Kim Jong-un is a current leader of a totalitarian government, which Trump idolizes, I believe. He certainly idolizes Putin. Putin has been in power for 20 years. He was just reelected again a couple of years ago. And I think that ideology sits well with Trump. He wants to have absolute power. He wants to really control the USA. He has, I've mentioned this in past presentations, where when he was married to I can't remember her name, I think she's Russian, the Russian wife, Ivanka's mother. I only know the name of the children, but I don't remember the mother's name. But anyway, they were married, and she found that he was reading the book Mein Kampf, the rise and fall of Hitler's Nazism, and he often referred to Hitler's totalitarian government, some aspects of it that he admired. And so I think with totalitarian governments that he admires from past and to present, there's that total power over, absolute power over humankind is his goal. And I was also thinking today that if God, the Godhead or Christ, prolongs the second coming. I don't think another 20 years, as Putin has had, will quite turn into totalitarian government in the US, but he's already looking at how to defy the system and get a third term in elections. So he definitely has an agenda and a goal in mind, but Putin isn't even a totalitarian government, as we're going to find out next. So what about Putin? It was brought up when I was asking for totalitarian governments. Also described by scientists, historians, and international observers as authoritarian, but not fully totalitarian, as described in Hannah Ardent's book. She breaks down the history of totalitarianism in that book again. And when you compare to Russia today under Putin's power, there are some clear distinctive differences. And so he's really not classified as a totalitarian government, and we're going to find out why. Putin holds significant personal control over Russia's government. Secret, I don't think that word is correct, forces, and he holds power over the economy. Power concentrated in Putin's hands with minimal checks and balances from any opposition. Suppression on opposition. So political opponents face harassment, imprisonment, exile, or death under mysterious circumstances. Two pretty famous instances in recent history. Alexei Navalny last year and Boris Nemtsov. So looking at Boris Nemtsov, he was a physicist, a former deputy prime minister of the Russian Federation. He was a liberal politician and an opposition leader, outspoken critic of Vladimir Putin. Early in his political career, he was involved in the introduction of reforms into Russian post-Soviet economy. And Alexei Navalny, I think he was running, or I'm not really sure of the date here. I know that he died last year. I guess it was in February. He was a Russian opposition leader, anti-corruption activist, and a political prisoner. And he founded the Anti-Corruption Foundation in 2011. So, oh, maybe that was his birth date, June 4th, 1976 to February 16 last year, 2024. So both men ran against Putin, and both of them were detained in prison and then murdered afterwards. Restrictive laws limit political organization, public demonstrations, and freedom of speech. So under Putin, there's no freedom of speech. He limits public demonstrations, and if something does happen, like if there's riots or people uprise against the political powers, they're faced with tear gas and military police and tanks, and everyone is taken to prison. He also controls the media, dominance over state-run television, and also by running state television and media and news outlets, it's also a vehicle for his propaganda. Independent media outlets will be shut down, censorship, and also face economic pressure. Elections with limited fairness, very limited fairness, or no fairness at all. When elections do occur, they're heavily manipulated, ensuring that Putin and his allies remain in power, hence the 20 years plus. Opposition candidates are frequently barred, discredited, or prevented from running, or put to death. We've seen that. During the election time periods, There's heavy state security and heavy surveillance. There's zero privacy, no autonomy, personal autonomy. Let's see. Yeah, and there's more of repeating it of itself. Also, under Putin's government, nationalistic ideology. He promotes a nationalist vision of emphasizing Russian power, sovereignty to his historical pride, Russia's historical pride. Also, as I recall, Putin is desiring to get back pre-Soviet Union, pre-post World War II. I remember again another article where I've read that idolized the Stalinism regime, totalitarianism. So similar to Donald Trump, likes that power. He's had a lot more years of experience, more so than Donald Trump. He's had 20 years to expand experiments with the people of Russia. But the question is Putin's Russia totalitarian? Well, according to Hannah Ardent's perspective, totalitarian includes complete society control and all-encompassed ideology and total eradication of civil society and independent institutions. So under that guise of ideology, there is zero freedom of any kind, zero uprising, zero plans, zero anything individual. It's all 100% controlled. And Putin's regime, while extremely authoritarian, still allows limited personal autonomy, economic freedom to disagree to a limit. People are allowed to travel abroad and they're allowed a private life. It does not yet meet Ardent's strict criteria for totalitarianism, not yet. However, politically speaking, and political scientists have argued that Putin's Russia is increasingly shifted towards a more severe authoritarianism. And especially has increased when during the invasion of the Ukraine until present. However, this presentation does not talk about Russia, Putin being the king of the South, or the loss of its power post-Ukraine war and losing potential friendship. I wouldn't even say ally quite with the Trump government, but they were definitely cozy at one time during the first term for Trump, and they had shared quite a few secret meetings and dialogues, but I don't believe that relationship is there anymore. And this presentation is not about the destruction of the King of the South. It's just talking about Putin's Russia. Conclusion, I've already read that. It's definitely not totalitarianism. It is just hardcore authoritarianism. So I have a question. My presentation, I like to also include a little bit of Bible. And when I was wondering to myself, where does the mystery of iniquity fit into all of this, right? Does anybody want to just give me a really try at your best quick explanation of the mystery of iniquity? We're going to go into it anyways, but if you want. No? Okay. I don't want too much long of a pause if we're recording. So found in 2 Thessalonians 2:7, from the King James Version. I'm just reading it as it is. For the mystery of iniquity does already work. Only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way. And then there's a modern translation from ESV. It says, for the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now refrains, it will do so until it'll be taken out of the way. Very similar. So, lawlessness in our governments today, what does it mean? Well, the basic gist of which is complex in itself. I mean, we are definitely seeing it uh, in God in the governments of the world. We saw it in heaven, and it's basically the rebellion against God and God's kingdom and God's government. It's a presence of evil, lawlessness. It's also hidden and it's subtle, but very active in the world today. I have a couple of quotes from Ellen White. I'm only going to read one of them. I'm going to read this one. And my apologies, I don't know where it's from. I just picked it up off the internet. Like, there was a quote, but I don't know where it's from. But it can be easily found if someone's quick at it. In Satan's masterly working with the human mind, his true character is scarcely discerned, for he clothes himself as an angel of light. But his suggestions, if followed, result in bearing fruit of a very dangerous quality. Its appearance to finite judgment is flattering as a higher form of good, but it is the deceiving power of the enemy, the working of the mystery of iniquity. By their fruits you shall know them. Okay, so spiritual forces and human actions quietly working against God. God's truth and order leading ultimately toward the end times. But, for myself and a more general look of the mystery of iniquity, I've always understood it as a mixture of truth and error. But now I'm not so sure that's entirely true, as we're learning our old messages are much more complex than what we thought. Uh, as beautiful as prayer is, it is very deep and very complex. So is the mystery of iniquity. The mystery, the mystery is seen as both spiritual and a moral rebellion, not just obvious sin, but a deeper corruption rooted in humanity's rebellion against God's authority. And it's called mystery because of evil. Evil often works secretly, subtly, influencing people's hearts, thoughts, beliefs, and ultimately societies, cultures, and governments. Another application of the mystery of iniquity, also a warning to remain spiritually vigilant for us as a church, discerning and aligned with God's truth in worldly deceptions and temptations. I see there's things going on in the chat. Do you want me to stop here so someone can bring up some chats? We can have a short discussion. I'm almost done, so we are coming to the conclusion, so I might have a little time. I'm not sure. I'll leave that to you. No? Okay, I'll continue. We can bring up the chat afterwards. So yeah, so exactly. So for us as a church, we see what's going on in the governments of the world. We recognize it for what it is. It might be cloaked in totalitarianism, authoritarianism. The mystery of iniquity is aligned in there. This is Satan's kingdom, regardless of what title you want to place on it. And Satan has an agenda, and he uses the humans of the world to achieve that agenda. To sit on, to be the king of the north, to sit on that throne on earth and rule this earth. And he has done so quite successfully. Maybe I shouldn't gender Satan as a he, or it rather. Has successfully ruled this world, but he hasn't completely ruled God's true church, because we are a small group of people worldwide And we absolutely have a very powerful message of equality that dismantles authoritarian and totalitarianism governments. However, not yet. These governments are still quite powerful and still rule to the day. And we haven't met up with that part of crossing the abyss just yet. However, so my question in my presentation, I was wondering, are there similarities between the mystery of iniquity and totalitarianism and authoritarianism? Let's see if there is. Where it refers to hidden, ongoing spiritual lawlessness at work in the world, leading toward the rise of the man of sin, or Satan, also known as the Antichrist. Spiritual in nature, but affects political and social systems. Described as hidden rebellion against God's order, a force that resists truth, justice, and divine authority. Often associated with description, counterfeit power, and corrupt control over people. That's that breakdown of bringing the mystery of iniquity into what we're looking now at as totalitarianism and authoritarianism, the political systems. These are forms of political control. Authoritarianism, concentrated power in one leader of a small group, limited freedoms, political dissent, and suppressed. Totalitarianism, an extreme version where the state tries to control every aspect of life, thought, belief, behavior, economy, education, media, etc., which involves suppression of truth, mass surveillance, propaganda, cult of personality, leader worship, loss of individual freedom. Okay. And coming to a conclusion, I have a chart, but I wanted to put it on the board, but I didn't because it wasn't easy to do. I'm wondering if I can just read my chart out. Because I'm sure, how much time do I have left? I just want to do a breakdown comparison of these three powers, or these three ruling powers, if you can consider the mystery of iniquity a ruling power or not, I'm not sure. But if someone can tell me how much time I have left of my presentation, please.
You have all 30 minutes.
Okay, thank you. This will not take 30 minutes, but maybe it might. So I wanted to break down the similarities between these three powers. And I do believe Mr. of Iniquity certainly is a power that humans grapple. They collect it and they use it because it's against God's or law and order, of course. So if you can grab yourselves a pen and paper, you can write the table as I read it. And hopefully my reading of this table, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 4 columns down. So get a paper and a pen. Draw 4 columns down. The title of the first column is called Theme. Theme, Theme. The second name of the title of the column is called Mystery of Iniquity. The third column title is called Authoritism and Totalitarianism together. That's the third column. And the fourth column is called Shared Element. So what do all three groups, what similarities are between all three groups? This is my table that I do not have a picture of for you. So under theme, the first title is called Control and Deception. Under the mystery of iniquity, the first part of that column, under theme, control and deception, It operates through spiritual deception and lies. Under authoritarianism and totalitarianism, it operates under using propaganda, censorship, and manipulation. And all three combined shared elements, they both rely, all three of them rely on manipulating truth. So under theme, the second part in that column, part 2. So control and deception was part 1. Part 2 is rebellion against good. Under mystery of iniquity, rebellion against God's moral and natural laws. Under authoritarianism and totalitarianism, number 2, rebellion against democratic and human right values. So human rights and the values of human rights and rebellion against democratic government is number 2 under rebellion against God, the theme. I hope I'm not confusing everybody. And they both represent a system of corruption. So all three have that in common, that it represents a system of corruption. Number 3, under the column of theme, is the hidden agenda. Under mystery of iniquity, hidden agenda describes as already at work, but hidden. Hidden agenda under authoritarianism and totalitarianism often masks intentions behind patriotism or unity. Hidden agenda, where they all have this in common, is deceptive intentions cloaked in good sounding language. So it might sound good, it might sound truth, but it's errors or lies, or it rewrites history in a sense. Under the theme column, first column under theme, number 4 is called suppression of truth. Suppression of truth under mystery of iniquity opposes truth and righteousness. Suppression of truth under authoritarian and totalitarianism silences dissent, controls media and education. Oh, what happened? My notes. Oh, I need to go back. Oh, sorry. I lost my notes. Oh my goodness. Well, maybe I have it somewhere else. Hang on a sec. Let me see if okay, give me 2 seconds. I lost my notes. I pressed something and it went away. Oh my goodness. I apologize. Okay, I have it here. My apologies again. So this is my table. I had just gone over suppression of truth. Under the mystery of iniquity, it opposes truth and righteousness. Suppression of truth under authoritarianism and totalitarianism, it silences dissent, controls media and education. And the shared element between the three is truth is inconvenient and suppressed. Under number 5, under theme, is called centralized power. So centralized power under the mystery of iniquity leads to the rule of the Antichrist. Under authoritarianism and totalitarianism, centralized power concentrates power in one ruler or regime. And the shared element of centralized power is unchecked power over people. So they're complete control over people. Under the theme column, the last one, number 6, is spiritual warfare. spiritual warfare under the mystery of iniquity, seen as part of cosmic battle between good and evil. And spiritual warfare under authoritarianism and totalitarianism, rarely acknowledged as spiritual, but deeply affects souls. So we know that when we have just learned about totalitarianism, you have no personal autonomy at all. It doesn't exist. You don't have the freedom to think. You don't have the freedom to act. You don't have the freedom to uprise. If you do, you're shot on the spot. And the shared element of spiritual warfare destabilizes moral compass and human dignity. Did I read that one already? I must have. So that concludes my presentation today. I think basically maybe it has a title of, well, it doesn't matter. Totalitarianism, authoritarianism. I can't even say it properly. And then we can conclude with what is mystery of iniquity? How does it fit in to what we've just learned between these two governing powers? And I am done. I'm going to pray now. Do I pray now?
Yeah, that's fine.
Let's pray. Okay, good.
Mhm.
Dear Holy God, I want to thank you for allowing me the time to give a presentation that's educational. That we have some basic more understanding of these powers that have been are ruling our world today, where Satan's kingdom has risen and is exploiting humans to do his bidding. And the final battle isn't even upon us, but we are all resting in truths and understanding our personal message, peeling back deeper understanding of God's word, and what we thought was simple is not. Nothing is simple. It's all complex and it's all beautiful and it's all in order. And we're very grateful for that. Please, as we continue our Sabbath, bless us with discussion and talk and understanding and many more blessings yet to come. We're grateful for your mercy. In the name of Jesus, amen.